she asked Razvan what it was that made him change his mind about Amanda after meeting her in person. And personally, I was really confused by this question because did you not see the entire season? Like, did we not sit and watch all of these episodes? What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Jada here, back with another video. So today we're going to be diving into 90 Day Fiance Before the 90 Days. This is their tell-all part 2. So if you guys would like to check out my recap of part 1, I'm going to link that in the corner here for you guys. But now we're going to be diving into all the craziness that happened in the second half of the tell-all. So now we dive into the other couples. Now we kind of left off with Violet responding to the question that Sean had asked her in part 1, if she could confirm if she is indeed pregnant with Riley's child, and she reveals that she unfortunately lost the baby, and she gets a little emotional, which is definitely something that is really sad, and I am definitely hoping that she could recover from that mentally, because the mental reaction definitely lasts a lot longer than the physical. So I'm hoping that she is okay, but she does confirm that she was indeed pregnant with Riley's child. But according to Riley, this is the first time that he's even hearing that there was a miscarriage. I definitely believe that she probably withheld a lot of information, at least from a pattern that I've seen with Violet during the show. I think she more than likely did withhold information from Riley, and that this is definitely the first time that he's even hearing about a miscarriage. Now, Riley, of course, still feels really disconnected from the whole thing because of how disconnected their information exchange was really with each other, because obviously she hasn't really kept him in the loop with everything. And Jasmine, ironically, is the first one to remind Riley that he also has his own issues. But I thought it was kind of funny considering it was coming from Jasmine of all people, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, okay. Riley reveals that Violet was actually coming to the US, but not for him. It was actually for something else, but they decided they wanted to meet up regardless. And I guess he's just leaving the door open for a possible reconciliation, but he said that he's not really hoping for one, but he's just leaving it open for a possibility. But they go on break and Jasmine talks to Riley about his toxic relationship with Violet, and they discuss the fact that he was actually thinking about proposing to Violet during the show while he was in Vietnam. And I do think that's really wild. Honestly, you see how dysfunctional, before you even get to Vietnam, you already see how dysfunctional your relationship is, and you bought a ring. Like, what? But I'm happy obviously that he chose not to propose. At the end of the day, I think their relationship is better off than on, you know, and just I think they should just end things and leave it at that. Now, Christian and Cleo, so they have seen each other again. A few days ago, Cleo actually came over to the US, but she only met up with the women in his family, not the men. So Christian tries to explain that because his family are pretty conservative leaning and have said hurtful things in the past to him about his relationship with Cleo, who is a trans woman, he just didn't want her to experience that firsthand. So that's ultimately why he didn't let her meet the rest of his, or at least the male side of his family. So I understand that. Cleo's friend Jane ends up joining the chat, and she says that because Cleo shares the good and the bad about her relationship with Christian to her, she's just a little concerned about them. And the biggest issue was Christian, of course, continuing the chat with other girls outside of Cleo. There was one particular incident that gets brought up, but Cleo tries to, of course, skirt around it. So Christian decides to talk about it instead. So while Cleo was staying with Christian in the US, she noticed that Christian had a Discord server that he named Steiner's Anonymous, where he would interact with other people. And there was one girl in particular on there that was very vocal about what she thought about Christian and how attractive he was and so on and so forth. So it made Cleo kind of uncomfortable because he would still interact with this woman. So to cover his behind, when it came to how the other couples were going to respond while he was on this tell-all talking about this, he says that he's a very extroverted person and he likes to talk to people, but that's all. And Amanda came right out and she said that she felt as though he was just making excuses instead of just owning up to what he did. And he says that he only felt that what he did was wrong because of how Cleo felt about it. And even Riley came out and said, you know, wrong answer. And I was like, yeah, definitely the wrong answer, sir. Even in the show, there was just way too much chatter with other women, in my opinion, just way more than the usual chit chat. Okay, so it was weird. We actually get to see some never before seen footage of Christian asking that girl to come to Cleo's house for Thanksgiving. And even though she couldn't make it because she was going to be in another country, he still gets her number. Why? Why are you getting her number, sir? Okay, what is the purpose? But what's even crazier is that they found this woman. They found this woman and brought her onto the show. Her name is Deborah. And even she thought, when she got on the show and was asked about this situation, even she thought that Christian was flirting with her. But Cleo feels like she's never going to be enough for Christian because of him continuing this chit chat with other women. And I can understand where she's coming from. And everyone just kind of dogpiled on Christian in this situation about everything that he was saying and everything that was coming out and being discussed. So Christian basically says that he felt as though he was being attacked. And I can kind of understand where he's coming from because everyone did kind of dogpile on him. If you watch that episode back, everyone definitely did kind of all contribute their own opinions. Okay, there was a lot going on, but at the same time, they weren't wrong. So I think it was just a matter of everybody kind of contributing to the conversation at once and him just feeling overwhelmed, but at the same time, you know, their opinions weren't really incorrect. But before the segment ended, he basically asked Cleo if she would be willing to marry him. He didn't really ask her to marry him. He just asked her if she would be willing to marry him. And I was just like, why would you ask that? It's just kind of weird. I don't know if he was just doing that to make sure that if he did propose that she would say yes. I'm like, why would you ask someone if they'd be willing to marry you? Not asking them if they want to marry you, yes or no, but if you'd be willing to marry me when I actually popped the question. You know, it's really strange. But anyways, he does it in the most unromantic way possible on the show. And he just kind of slides it in there in regular conversation. And the wording was just really weird. So I'm not really sure what that was about, but I kind of gave what I thought it was. But let's move on to Sheila and David. So Sheila now has a shop where she can actually sell stuff. She, I think, named the shop Sheila and David. You know, their names. That's good to hear that she now has some type of income besides, of course, what David would give to her. So David also went to an immigration lawyer to see how long the process would take to bring Sheila to the US, and they ended up telling him that it would be upwards of about 2 years or more. And I'm just like, wow, that's a lot. David helped Sheila out with getting improvements also to the house that she lives in the Philippines with her dad. It used to be both her parents, but of course, like we saw in the show, her mom unfortunately passed away because of the house being in such a disrepaired state. I definitely understood why in that show she was so adamant about getting it fixed up, and I'm happy that she now has a fixed up house because it was looking hella crazy in there. Sean also asked David if he'd been in contact with the interpreter that they had when he was in the Philippines, and when Sean asked, there was a little bit of a pause. I don't know if there was just a delay with the interpreter that David had. Maybe he was just taking a little bit longer to read the signs or what, but it was a really weird, awkward pause, especially how they edited it. It just seemed as though he was pausing to think about his answer. It definitely gave me a little bit of a skip of a beat there. I was like, David, what are you doing? And then he finally answers and he just says, you know, of course not. Hell no. You know, I only have eyes for Sheila. That's it. I definitely had no contact with this woman, this interpreter afterwards. But the pause definitely had everybody on edge. Definitely had me on edge. But it does look like they're in a good space. But I'm just kind of worried about how long it's going to take for him to get Sheila over to the US. Now, let's move back to Gino and Jasmine when it comes to the prenup. Okay, their prenup situation during the show. And of course, Sean had to ask if he made his ex-wife sign a prenup as well, which he didn't. But at the same time, that could have kind of been a mistake. I think in that relationship, he probably was just so wrapped up in the idea of love and not really thinking about divorce, which is nice in retrospect, but it's something that could still happen, you know? So I think with this relationship with Jasmine, I think he is more cognizant of that fact. So I think he just wanted to cover his behind this time around. But, you know, like we saw in the show, he decided not to go forward with it. But Misha, of course, took Jasmine's side, but everyone else seemed to back Gino up on the whole prenup thing. And I personally do as well, because you really don't know what could happen and what that other person is capable of until they do it. Jasmine, you know, she went on to talk about her vaginal rejuvenation surgery. She ended up getting a consultation during the first few episodes of the show before Gino came over to Panama to visit her. And now it seems as though her poo-poo nana, which is what she calls her down there part, her poo-poo nana is now too tight to be entered. So it's just kind of like, okay, interesting. Now you made it a whole other problem where it's too tight now. Before it was too loose. But anyways, they're also in the process of planning a wedding, and Jasmine is of course missing her family, and I could definitely understand that, which is definitely why I'm having any future weddings, okay, that I have is gonna be here in the Bahamas, definitely, with all of my family. Everyone else is just gonna have to figure it out, because no way am I doing something like this by myself in a foreign country. Obviously my immediate family would probably come over, but I want my extended family to be there as well, so everybody else is just gonna have to figure it out. But I'm definitely having my wedding here for sure. Now we're going to move on to Amanda and Razvan. They're going to be the last couple of the tell-all part 2. We find out that Amanda and Razvan are no longer together, but they're still friends. I think that's probably something that she, or at least Amanda, said just to make it sound nice, but I don't think they're actually friends. I don't think they hate each other, but I don't think they're friends, because why would you be friends with Amanda? She's a lot. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, she's not really a nice person in my opinion. I'm honestly not that shocked that they broke up. Really soon after she went back to the US, they had actually decided to break things off. Apparently it was because Razvan was very focused on himself and his career, and Riley decides to make it seem like Amanda was being used for sex by Razvan, considering how quickly after she left Romania that he decided to switch his focus. But thankfully Christian jumps in and he says exactly what I think, you know, most of us were probably thinking, which is that Razvan couldn't really voice what he wanted in the relationship. And Jasmine also brings up the fact that Amanda wasn't necessarily being the nicest person to him. If you watch all these episodes back, like, girl, not the nicest at all. But according to Amanda, whoever is with her needs to have thick skin, is what she says. But I think in order to have an intimate relationship with someone, they have to feel safe with you, and that isn't really possible if they constantly feel like they're being attacked all the time. So Amanda basically tells Jasmine to shut the F up. In all due respect, you don't know me. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. You even close up on Jasmine's face, she's just like in shock, like, did you really just tell me to shut the F up? Yes, she did. But at the same time, I have to agree with Jasmine, like, she was not really that nice on the show. So Amanda's sister Amber comes on and she asks Razvan what it was that made him change his mind about Amanda after meeting her in person. And personally, I was really confused by this question, because did you not see the entire season? Like, did we not sit and watch all of these episodes? Like, the reasons were pretty apparent, okay? They were pretty dang apparent. Amber also ends up kind of spilling the beans about Amanda having a little too close of a relationship with another creator over on TikTok, which is where I believe she met Razvan. So she was being kind of flirtatious with this person while also being supposedly committed to Razvan in a long distance relationship. So apparently she would kind of run to the sky whenever she and Razvan would have fights. So that's never a good sign. Ultimately, not shocked that they broke up. I hope it stays that way, because Lord, that relationship was tumultuous. But anyways, let's move on to Tyree and Carmela, or Carmela the catfish, basically. Tyree's story ended pretty quickly because the producers ended up finding out that Carmela wasn't real and that it was another person basically catfishing Tyree. And he also went on to find the real person, you know, the image that that person was using. Her real name obviously wasn't Carmela, it was something else, I can't remember. But that interaction that he had with that woman, who obviously knew nothing about the situation, was very awkward. And I think he also tried to stay in contact with her, but she was like, nah, it's okay. So it was weird, but it pretty much ended there. But Tyree comes back, you know, he's on the tell-all, and they invite the producer, who I think discovered that Carmela was a catfish, onto the show, and they played the recording of the phone call that she had with this person called Christian, who was the actual person behind the Carmela profile. He felt nothing for Tyree, and that their relationship was strictly about him getting money from Tyree. Like, he didn't care about all the other stuff. He pretty much just saw Tyree as another dumb individual. Obviously, Tyree definitely takes all of that to heart, and I think he definitely could have had some closure if he decided, as soon as it happened, to talk to this person, Christian. Obviously, he was gonna feel his feelings. He's gonna have emotions about the whole thing, being catfished for so many years. I don't even understand how that even happens. How do you stay committed to a person that you've never met for years? That still baffles me. Even watching Catfish, a show over on I think it's MTV that they're still on, right? Even watching those episodes, it still behooves me that that's still a thing. Y'all are staying committed to someone that you've never met? Like, really? When there's people that you've seen in person and you know are real, you wouldn't date them instead? You know? But anyways, regardless, I'm not trying to make fun of Tyree or, you know, make him feel bad about himself, but at the same time, it's just like, how Sway? They do give him the opportunity on the show to leave a message for Christian, but he doesn't really say anything. Riley pretty much just had to say something along the lines of, "We're coming for you," or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, obviously they can't do anything about the situation. It is what it is. Tyree got catfish and now he has to move on. I know that's probably going to be difficult because he thought he was in a relationship with someone for so long and it ends up not being real. So all of this has been a pretty interesting recap of the whole show. Obviously hearing the other couples kind of chime in on each other's individual problems was rather interesting, especially when Jasmine would talk. Because it's like, girl, be quiet. Like, what are you talking about? A lot of things she would come after other people about. It's just like, this is ironic, Jasmine. Really ironic and a little hypocritical, like a sprinkle of it. But y'all let me know your thoughts on all of this down in the comments. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.